is over the top. Pasta, caramelized onion, pieces of haricot vert and yellow wax bean, beautiful mushrooms, black truffles. I love things like this, all layered together. A lasagna, but done a little bit differently. Hedgehog mushrooms. Gentlemen, I'm ready for these pasta dishes. You got that, Timble?
Yes, chef.
Beautiful. This looks great, gorgeous. Lots of truffles to finish it. You got the emulsion?
Yes, chef.
I'm ready for that too. Beautiful. Let me take that. Wild mushroom emulsion. I'm just going to spoon some of this all over the top of this lasagna. Yes, this is a lasagna. Not like other lasagnas that we're used to, where everything is cooked together. No, no, no. This one is done a la minute. That's the restaurant term for made to order. Everything put together at the last possible second. A drizzle of basil oil, a little touch of basil, just to give it that accent, a twist of pepper. Now that is something special. This kind of dish, unbelievable. You want to blow somebody away? You serve them a vegetable lasagna that features black truffles, made to order, everything layered together, incredible textures. All the vegetables keep their integrity because they're not all cooked together. But you know what? Sometimes it's great when they're cooked together because the flavors meld together perfectly and it's an unbelievable treat. I'm going to show you how I make a vegetable lasagna the old-fashioned way. Everything put together, roasted off slowly, beautiful cheese oozing out. Come on. Of course, it's hard to beat the traditional way to make a lasagna, where we take a variety of ingredients, layer them together, let it go in the oven for a bit, take it out, let it sit, and everything just melds together perfectly. When I was 19 or 20 years old, I was a vegetarian of sorts. I don't know what I was thinking, but I made many, many vegetarian lasagnas, and I learned in that process how to put the cheese together, how to get everything together. These days, I still make vegetable lasagnas, but I don't take it quite so seriously, and sometimes I even serve a little bit of meat on the side, maybe some sausages or certain types of steaks and things like that, and that's one way to appease the meat eater. Anyway, I've started this, I've got things going. I like to roast the vegetables partially to begin with, so that I've gotten their flavor concentrated and I've got things pretty much cooked and ready to go. Along the way here, I've already laid in some grilled eggplant pieces, some roasted zucchini and squash pieces, caramelized onion, roasted tomato, going layers of pasta, layers of ricotta cheese, layers of mozzarella, layers of the different vegetables, alternating herbs in between. I'm actually using buffalo milk mozzarella. This is a nice way to give it a little twist, something a little bit different. This has a whole different flavor. Once you've tried buffalo milk mozzarella, it's kind of hard to go back. It's just a different level of complexity. Let's continue on here. I've got some beautiful yellow squash that I previously roasted. I'm going to lay some oven-dried tomato in here. This is partially oven-dried tomato. It's not completely oven-dried, where it's dried and chewy. I want to leave some of the texture here. The reason behind oven drying these a little bit is that I evaporate some of the water out, concentrating the flavor. It just really gives me more of that explosive tomato flavor that I really want on a dish like this. So I'm taking a few pieces, laying them in here, and this is really going to be nice. You know, and there's no, maybe you want to add layers of bell pepper too, roasted bell pepper. That's very nice. I've done this many times where I've taken fennel, totally roasted it, caramelized it, layered it in here. So really any theme of flavors that you like. In this case, all this Mediterranean theme working together very, very compatibly. Let's add some garlic, chopped up garlic. Raw garlic is great. We can use some roasted garlic if we don't quite like that intense raw garlic flavor. If we want something a little sweeter, we'll go ahead now and add some layers of the buffalo milk mozzarella, which will just melt right in, blending everything together. This is so nice. The cheese element, of course, is almost like the glue. This will keep everything the way it needs to be, and it makes it easier for us to cut. We could eliminate the cheese. I know sometimes people don't want to have too much cheese. Buffalo milk mozzarella is actually pretty low in calories. It's a very, very healthy cheese. So we'll go back and finish up with our pasta, a few herbs. This is a mixture of rosemary and parsley. And we'll begin to just add a few sheets here. We can just shingle these pieces of pasta. Very simple. And then this just goes into a 400-degree oven for approximately 30 minutes. Really, everything's cooked, so it's not so much that we're cooking this as we're melding it together, melting the cheese. We'll go ahead now and maybe smear a little bit of the ricotta cheese on the top. Get a few spoonfuls out on here. And I've got one of these nice offset spatulas. These are pretty handy for this sort of thing. This will, one of the reasons I want to finish with a little bit of ricotta cheese, or maybe I could put a little caramelized onion on top. This will prevent the pasta from drying out. If we end up with leaving the pasta exposed on top, it almost gets a little bit too crunchy, a little bit too dried out. Really, really beautiful. So, you know, we're pretty much ready to go. If I want to, I can even crumble a little bit more mozzarella on top, and this will sort of bubble into it, melt into it a little bit, even help in the browning of it, which will be kind of nice. So we'll add a little bit of this, final sprinkle of herbs, and we'll be ready to put that in the oven. And that's a good opportunity when this is in the oven for us to finish up a sauce if we want to serve this with a sauce. It's moist enough. A sauce is optional, but I think it's fun to add that extra twist. So let's go ahead and get this in the oven. Remember, this is preset at about 400. We'll just slide it in. And this has been cooking. And we can see really how gorgeous this is. This beautiful browning effect, just really fantastic. Let's let that sit over here and just rest for a few minutes while we make a sauce for this dish. I've got some saffron here. I've started off just kind of roasting it briefly in a pan, releasing that beautiful perfume, that oil, that exotic natural oil that exists in the saffron. Added water, a splash of water, and I end up with this bloomed full flavor. So I'm going to scrape some of this, not all of it. This will be very strong. I just need a little bit, maybe let some of that juice go in there, into my blender. And I'm going to add a few oven-dried yellow tomatoes. We've got the red tomatoes in the lasagna, a few yellow tomatoes too, and I'm going to add some of these yellow tomatoes. They've got a much more concentrated flavor. I've got them on a rack here. This helps the air circulate completely around the tomatoes, and we'll just go ahead and throw a few of these in. The reason I've dried them partially is because I evaporate the water in the oven and concentrate that flavor, so I'm going to end up with a very explosively flavored yellow tomato puree with the saffron and even a few pieces of roasted yellow bell pepper. Roasted yellow bell pepper, yellow tomato sauce, flavored with saffron. Pretty delicious stuff. Let's add a little seasoning now. I had some seasoning on the tomatoes, so I don't need too much. Some pepper. And we're pretty much ready to blend that up. Be careful here. Just let's add a little bell pepper juice here. Sometimes you need to add a little bit of liquid just to get it going. And these flavors are very, very complementary to all of the things we have working here with the eggplant and the zucchini, the caramelized onion. We can push this through a strainer if we want to make it super smooth, and then we'll just heat it up. This kind of thing, we could make this as the pasta's cooking. We could make this the day beforehand, and then it's all ready to go. Always think of steps that can be done in advance. I could make, if I want to, lasagna is a great dish for having a group of friends over, a party, a dinner party. Make it in advance. Have it ready to go, and the next day you can just you can heat it up. Let's get this back on the stove for a moment, just warm it up a little bit, and I think we're ready to check out our lasagna and see how everything is. Got this right here, and it's looking pretty good. After letting it sit and rest, we'll cut a nice wedge here. Let's see. Looks great. I can just smell the garlic wafting up as I cut into this, as I release that beautiful flavor, and the rosemary. So let's get a piece out here and see how it looks. Let's see. Wow, that's looking pretty good. Let's just let that sit on the side. Get our sauce over here. Let's check it out. It's looking pretty good. So we have our sauce. Now we're ready to plate this dish. And remember, we can use as little or as much sauce as we like. I'm just going to put a spoonful down. Just a simple pool of yellow tomato, yellow bell pepper, saffron sauce. We're going to set our lasagna right in the center here. We can pretty much serve that up as it is, or if I want to go ahead and add a few herbs, I made a second sauce just to give it a twist. Sometimes it's fun to do something sort of whimsical. I took some roasted red bell peppers, pureed them with a couple of cloves of roasted garlic, passed it through a fine strainer, salt and pepper, and that's all that is. This is a fun way to add if we want to bring on an additional color note, an additional flavor. That's all we have. It's very, very simple. And sometimes it's fun to give it a different sort of twist. So this is our dish, this beautiful vegetable lasagna, healthy stuff, different types of cheese, blending together with the pasta. We've got the great vegetables, these roasted, full-flavored vegetables, very, very sensual, all these flavors melding together. Really a complex, concentrated sauce, a very light sauce, though, with the yellow tomato, roasted bell pepper, saffron sauce. Finally, this little accent of the red bell pepper sauce. I can't wait for you to serve this up at home. Maybe a really nice Gaia Barbaresco, something like that would be perfect with this. Sure, there are a lot of great pastas available in the market, both packaged and fresh. I've seen some really fantastic flavored pastas as well, but you know what? It's also very easy to make your own pasta. We start with some eggs that have been whisked together. If I want to flavor my pasta, now's the time to do it. Maybe some curry or cumin, maybe some chopped up herbs or a fine mushroom puree. Flour in the food processor. I've got semolina flour. This makes for a great textured pasta. Dump my eggs in. I could sure do this by hand, but this is a way for me to keep my work surface a little bit neater. It goes so quick. Pulse it. This will be done in less than 30 seconds. Pop it a few times. And you know what? If this is too moist, I'm going to add a little bit more flour. If it needs a little bit more liquid, I could drizzle in some water or maybe even a touch of olive oil. I take it out. It's a little bit wet. It's no problem. We'll just work it for a moment on the surface, and it's easily enough done. The great thing about this is that this is done in advance because it needs to rest at least for an hour, but if you want to do this the day before, it's fantastic. I always tell people a great way to relate to the food, to get a little therapy in, is to work your pasta, massage it a little bit. It's almost like a meditative thing. I mean, I just kind of go back and rub the flour in, get it ready to go, and then I'm ready to let it relax. Let that gluten relax. Wrap it up, set it on the side. After about an hour or the next day, we've got our pasta. Unravel it, and we're ready to go. Take some of this. I can work with all of it or part of it. I'll take a little piece here. We can roll it out by hand, but they have some great pasta machines available these days, and it's easy enough to run it on through. All we do is push it through here each time, maybe add a touch of flour. The pasta itself will almost speak to you and tell you how much flour to use. You'll feel it. You'll gauge the moisture content with your fingers, and you'll be surprised. Even after doing this 2 or 3 times, you'll have a very good idea how much flour needs to be added. We keep on putting this through until we get to our desired thinness. I like to take this down pretty fine. I'm going to do once over like this, little fold, make it a little wider. This is kind of a nice way to get a very wide piece. Really get that flour thoroughly incorporated into the dough. You get a good workout too. You get your arm muscle working. So we put this on through, and I think one more time we'll be ready to cut this. Take it on down. And then we'll be ready to use this for anything we want. We can use this for lasagna, or we can cut it. A couple ways to cut it. One, I can fold it up, cut it by hand. Another way, great attachments for machines. This is a fine capellini attachment, sometimes called angel hair. You just run this on through, get this beautiful pasta. This stuff is gorgeous. Fresh pasta, this fine, just takes moments to cook. I'm going to put together something you've never seen before. It's called a noodle galette. We cook the pasta, we cool it down, we make a pancake out of it, and we saute it up. It's great for a delicate little appetizer. Well, I take my angel hair pasta, my capellini, cook it off in boiling salted water. Takes just seconds to cook if it's fresh, a little bit longer if it's dried. Shock it in ice water to stop the cooking once it's done, once it's al dente. And then I toss it in a little bit of olive oil, just a little bit, enough to kind of coat the edges. And then I'm ready to proceed with this special way to serve pasta that I don't really see too many people doing, but it's really very exciting and it's very simple. The objective here is to get something that's sort of crispy on the exterior, but still nice and al dente pasta on the interior. It's called a pasta or noodle galette, or noodle pancake, if you will. What we want to do is take a baking sheet or a roasting pan. I've lined this with plastic wrap, and I'm just going to take my noodles, kind of lay them out here nice and flat, a bed of noodles, if you will. I've also seasoned these. I've tossed a little salt and pepper here, because remember, it's got to taste the way you want to taste it when it's done. So after you've shocked the pasta in ice water and then tossed it in a little bit of olive oil, we want to go ahead and just add a touch of salt and pepper. Spreading the noodles out nice and smoothly, evenly, creating this sort of bed effect. We're ready to lay another piece of plastic on top of this. And this can really be done a day ahead of time. So we get this all out of the way, and I take a second roasting pan. This time I've got a couple of bricks that I've wrapped with foil. I could use any kind of heavy weight I find around the house. These are nice because they're about the right size. They fit in here perfectly evenly. It's about the right weight. I could take a pot of water also, which is about the same weight, set it on top, and really at this point all I do is set this in the refrigerator, leave it in there for about 4 or 5 hours or overnight, and then we're ready to cut out our noodle galettes and go from there. In the meantime, I want to go ahead and get some celery root. We're going to use this to make the broth. Celery root, you know, everybody knows about celery and what celery juice, but I think celery root, which is really not the root of a stalk of celery, it's a different vegetable altogether in the family, but a different vegetable. This has a more earthy and a sweeter flavor than celery stalks, and I think it really lends itself great to exotic spices like cumin or even curry. What I like to do is go ahead and peel this away, the exterior skin, a simple vegetable peeler or a paring knife. We peel away the skin, and then we're able to go ahead and cut the celery root into pieces that will fit into our juicer. Now, the juicing at home can be done so simply. It's really great because you can use a juicer for all different types of technique here. We can juice carrots to make a broth. We can juice celery, bell peppers, juice onions, fennel. So I use juicers all the time because you get all the flavor from the vegetable, but it's so light and it's so healthy. And juices can be consumed raw, or in this case, we're actually going to heat this juice up just to infuse a little flavor from the spice. So we push our celery root right through. And there are so many great varieties of juicers available today, and they'll last a long time, easy enough to use. So we'll go ahead and come back with our juice. When you think of vegetables, they're 99% water. That's where all the flavor is. It's not in the solid. It's literally in the liquid that's contained. So what we've done is extracted all of the flavor from the celery root. What I'm going to do now is roast off a few cumin seeds to infuse this with this flavor. So I want to just release the volatile oil here, let this just kind of give off its perfume. Most seeds and spices benefit greatly from a little application of heat. This is the best way to do it, in a pan, really simply. It could be roasted in an oven, but this is going to allow us just to pour our broth right into this pan carefully. Gets a little warm, and just let that steep for a moment. Get that on and give it just a few minutes over here where it can pick up some of that flavor. In the meantime, we're ready to get our noodle galette that we've allowed to sit for several hours. In this case, we've let it go overnight, so it's nice and firm. And I have a couple of options here. Pop it out, invert it back onto a cutting surface, the cutting board, or I could leave it in the pan like this and use a cutter, a round cutter, a cookie cutter, anything that you have around the house will be great. And I like to just cut a nice shape like this, and you might need the aid of a spatula, although sometimes it's quite firm and it's not really necessary. So we'll get a couple of these here, and we'll just slide that right in there, and we'll be ready to go. And we're ready to strain our beautiful celery root broth, now flavored fully with the cumin. I mean, this is so exotic and wonderful, these overtones from this Middle Eastern spice. There's a little bit of scum that's risen that'll be strained out in the strainer, and All we need to do to finish this is add a little salt and pepper and maybe a touch of butter if we want to give it a satiny kind of a finish. That will be sitting on the side ready for us. In the meantime, we can begin to saute our noodle galettes. So start with some oil, just a touch. And we'll just place these right in the pan. I also like to add a little bit of butter. This will help give me some nice color. We don't need too much. And in the meantime, we can get our vegetable element going, which will really add wonderful flavor and wonderful texture and kind of bring everything together. This is kind of an unusual sauce because I'm going to start with some mushrooms. I've got some oyster mushroom here, a couple pieces, and I've got some hedgehog mushroom, which you sometimes see. These are fun. We can cut them down a little bit if we want to, or leave them whole. Mushrooms are going to give this a really nice earthy element. We'll add those to the pan. We don't need to cook these too much. We're just going to soften them up. And like the noodle galette, we're going to add a pinch of butter at this point. I don't like to cook mushrooms in straight oil. I think sometimes they end up being a little bit greasy when they're in straight oil. I think sometimes if you add just a touch of butter, it makes it a little mellower. So once we have the mushrooms started and going and softening up, I'm going to add a little bit of verjus. What is verjus? Well, it's green grape juice. Grape juice that hasn't fermented. It still has some acidity to it, a little bit of sweetness. So it's not as sweet as grape juice, it's not as tart as vinegar, it's not wine, but it's somewhere in between, and it really gives a nice little elegant edge, acidic edge to all of this. We continue to sweat and steam the mushrooms in that mixture. That's also going to be just enough for us to add the lettuce to it, because we want to wilt and braise this lettuce component of this sauce. The reason I like to add something like this is we're going to look for this crunchiness, this sort of cleansing element. We could use romaine lettuce, we could use arugula if we like bite. I like Boston lettuce because it adds a butteriness, a crunch, which is very, very nice. I don't need too much. Just stir that in, it'll kind of wilt and soften in the pan. We can season at this point, salt, twisted pepper, and this will become the vegetable element for our dish. Very, very simple. So we've got our galettes, they're ready to come out. We've got our lettuce mushroom mixture flavored with the verjus sauce to give it a little bit of acid. We've got our broth, and we're ready to put this together. I'm going to remove the noodles to a towel. This way we can sort of blot off any extra liquid here. One thing I like to do is add a touch of butter to a sauce like this. Not too much. This really elegant flavor, Middle Eastern overtones with the cumin, pinch of butter, salt. Remember, we haven't seasoned this yet. Twist of pepper. We'll go ahead and whisk the butter in. We don't need much. It's just to give it a satiny finish. You know what? We can add some cumin seeds, which will be kind of nice. Not a lot, but that way when you're biting into everything and you come across a seed or two, it's a great little surprise. Let's go ahead and take our mixture, the lettuce and the mushrooms, just spoon it right into the center. You'll be amazed at how satisfying a texture and flavor something like wilted lettuce is. Just cooked, just softened, these buttery, rich mushrooms, earthy mushrooms. We've got our noodle galette, which we can place right in the center. Once again, we have the type of preparation that could go in a lot of directions right now. We can go ahead and add some pieces of poached fish or maybe a chicken breast that's been cut up and strewn about the edges. We can leave it as it is, and we've got a great little vegetarian appetizer. I'm going to spoon my cumin celery root broth on now. That aroma is just wafting up as I pour it in. If I want to reintroduce celery in yet another way, I've got a chiffonade of celery leaves. I can come back and strew a few of these about. This just adds that really wonderful, redolent, fresh celery flavor to the whole dish. So we've got the earthy celery root broth flavored with that exotic Middle Eastern cumin. We've got the fresh celery leaves. We've got the delicate sauté of the lettuce and the mushrooms, finished with the verjus. Everything comes together very, very nicely. You do this, and I think you're going to impress a lot of people. Thanks for joining us on the Kitchen Sessions. I look forward to seeing you next time.